all for your presence today and just for being here. This is Immersive by Design. I want to thank the Common Circuits crew for asking if we wanted to do something for this experience. It's really great to be here with all of you and everybody in this community and kind of get to know you all a little bit more and see your work and network, you know. The Atlanta art scene definitely needs more camaraderie and more connectivity. So again, thank you all for being here as well. I'm Ocasio. I'm an interdisciplinary designer and researcher. I primarily focus on multi-sensory cross-model, so how different senses overlay to produce different altered states of perception, primarily focusing on ecology and how we relate to nature within that sense. And this is...
Hello, my name is Garrett Braun, and by day I am a visual effects artist for film and television. My whole job is to make video nice and pristine and perfect, and then at night I am an analog video artist and I love making things dirty and messy. And with Luther I love exploring kind of new AV media and ways that we can integrate our art forms into traditional spaces or make our own.
All right. Well, just to kind of get into it, what is immersive? You know, I think that a lot of people use that word. It's really popular right now, especially in the experience and event industry, especially in the nightlife industry. And I think that what we do actually need more is truly immersive experiences. I think that Atlanta nightlife used to have a lot more pizzazz, a lot more uniqueness and diversity to it. And now I think there's been a lot of people who want to be curators and throw these experiences who didn't necessarily, where the art form didn't really get passed down from people who had put in the work and experience to create these like experiences. I remember going to, when I was like 17, I remember going to late night warehouse parties that would I would forget that I had to walk out of them eventually. And I miss that. I miss that experience. I think other towns have a lot more, other cities have a lot more experiences like that. And I think that's something that is kind of coming back. I think the underground is probably the most centralized location right now, throwing experiences like that, and there's still something sometimes missing from even that. But for me, the key thing about what makes something immersive to me is just the word presence. You know, am I off my phone for an extended period of time? Do I forget that there's a world outside of the experience in the world that I'm in currently? If I'm fully present with the people around me, in my skin, and so forth, that's when I feel immersed. It's not just, am I looking at LED screens? Am I turning knobs? And even with things that are interactive, that doesn't necessarily correlate to immersiveness, although it is cool.
You have that really great joke where, you know, nowadays anyone throws up a projector and says this is an immersive art piece or this is an immersive event. And you and I both love projectors, but there's kind of a deeper level to that, for sure.
Hey guys, real quick. Hey everyone. When people ask questions or Q&A, can you repeat the question in the mic so
Of
it's on the
course.
recording?
I got you, dog.
Mhm.
Thank you for a little tidbit.
Do we want to kind of hold questions to the end, or let's get through most of it, and then we want to have great conversations with all of you. So save those. So I know we talked about there's this trend that everyone is calling this immersive or exploring these new spaces, maybe without what we view as the full intent. And so I know, like, my personal definition for my alter ego over there that you'll see in the gallery of bad Chroma is that, you know, to me, immersive means we're activating as many senses as possible. And for me, that's using light, projectors, lights, you know, animation, DMX boards. I want the lighting synced up to sound, and then I want screens. I want the audience to be able to and to be encouraged to manipulate a piece. Basically, they're affecting it. Really, they're doing a significant lift of the creating, which is kind of what we're doing live behind us. Is just, you know, if you come into Gallery A with me, it's like I want you to pick the pieces of the art and make it and be involved and hopefully lose yourself in that creative process. And as Luther said, forget the outside world. But it's not just one of those pieces. It is as many of those pieces as you can. and that sort of transformation of people's, thoughts about a medium or the transformation of the space to kind of allow them to experience that freely.
Yeah, when I think about things that are interactive, like what does that truly mean? Does that just mean that I'm interfacing with this, or is it responsive? Something that's reactive, I touch it, something happens, or responsive, there's that feedback loop of it responding to the way that I interact with it, which is why I really love Touch Designer, is because you can kind of it's really limitless depending upon your skill, your imagination, and how much effort you want to put into it. And you can create a lot of different interfaces in ways that the artwork itself responds to the way that you engage with it, the way that people maneuver within a space, and creates that unique, bespoke experience that people are looking for. And like I said, I work a lot with nature and a lot with ecology, and I think that it's one of the most immersive experiences of all time. In so much so that there's a lot of science on like the effects of what it is to what happens when you go into nature. There's multiple compounds. It's like everything, there's overarching terms and then there's more specific niche terms. There's the term phytocide, and that's just compounds that trees produce that affect our neurobiology and affect how we experience nature. And we can trace that nature does calm people down, that it improves their mood and their focus. And you see that in why tech companies end up putting like a little green area so that you can kind of go calm down and then go back to the fluorescent lights. But this environment, like nature is responding to us in the way that we engage with it. We touch this flower and it releases these different terpenes that then our body, our human biocomputer essentially can respond to and understand the information about the world around us via that. And so I like to incorporate that a lot into my experiences. What does the room smell like? Depending upon my intent, like that's a big focus to me, because that's like smell is the silent sense, is the invisible sense. It's one of my most favorite. So, and it can bypass and go directly to your emotional center. So it produces the most emotional response and the quickest emotional response. It can unlock memories. You smell someone that reminds you of your grandmother, and all of a sudden you're like sitting on her lap or something. And so incorporating that smell, incorporating that sense as soon as people walk into a space. How do we want them to feel from entry and to exit, and kind of guiding our way through what people are going to engage with and the story that they're going to. Because most of it is storytelling and story building and world building, which is like, world building is the key and essential nature to what brand building will be.
I think that's something that always struck me about, I met Luther through his art gallery, the Bardo, and the way that you guys would take over spaces and from all of those senses, the lighting, the atmosphere, what I was sitting on, what I was smelling, what I was drinking or consuming, was this controlled environment that really would transport me. We'd be in a dusty warehouse on the west side, and there would be this little Zen lounge, and I would lose myself. I would forget that we were in the super dusty warehouse until I started walking and kicking up dust like that. But that control of the space, I think, is a big thing that we're going to talk about, and doing those things with intent too, that you're purposely triggering a sense in someone to get that feedback loop. I know a big part of that for me is using what I hope is technology that people remember from earlier in their lives, or maybe something they never experienced before that kind of triggers a false nostalgia, that I'm manipulating this thing, whether that's a VHS tape or a camera or a bundle of cables, right? But that this is taking them back somewhere, or kind of inverting their thoughts about something that, oh, this is old, but now I'm creating with this, and hopefully drawing people in. And I love feedback loops. We're running one right now, but we're hoping to trigger an internal feedback loop with that person and their response. So the entire audience, really.
Yeah, feedback loops are definitely essential. You can that key to responsiveness. Thank you for bringing up the Bardo. We did used to have a warehouse space in the West End. Some of you may have seen us online. We did a lot of different types of experiences working with different creatives, and we still are working. Primarily, I'm focused a lot more on AR and like XR and how to kind of create that digital bridge for people. There's this, I'll probably remember it by the end of this
In time for questions.
Yeah, there's this really cool short film. It's like 7 minutes on YouTube. And I think it gives this really beautiful perspective on like the way that AR can be used to create more connectivity to the world. So it goes through this story of a indigenous woman who is the first in her family to receive like AR glasses essentially, and then like going through her journey growing up with these AR glasses, but it's integrated a lot with her culture, her indigenous culture. So she's going out into the forest and going out to the woods, and it's teaching her about the plants that she's engaging with. In this world, I believe like butterflies don't exist anymore, so they can only interface with it via the like smart technology. Right? It's like, to me, that can really ground people more into the spaces around them, where a lot of our focus, or a lot of our technology and digital technology is focused on screens, like just this thing in our hands. It's kind of constantly keeping us in this other world. They've honestly succeeded at immersion on multiple different levels of keeping us stuck inside of this phone. But with AR, there's the chance for us to be present. In XR, there's the chance for us to be present within the reality and have multiple layers of things overlaid on that. You know, going into a forest and you're going on a guided hike with a person, or a digital avatar that will teach you about the different plants and species that exist and are coexisting within the space around you. And so a lot of my focus has been kind of on that nowadays, more so than a physical space. Because I don't know how many of you go to experiences like this, throw experiences like this, want to be more a part of experiences like this, but experience, like, without a budget to blow, events are very difficult. Like, having a space in this economy is very difficult without community and people who are willing to show up and show face for it. And there's not a lot of money in it. You often have to go through many different ways of like keeping the lights on until you get to a certain point, or unless you have certain funding. There's a lot of sponsorships. Like, sponsorships go a long way into throwing an experience and cutting the cost down. Like, okay, we might get product sponsorship that we can then sell this product or give it out to different people and so forth, and that awareness. But that just wasn't my cup of tea. I like designing spaces. I like storytelling, but I don't like managing spaces. So it's important that we know how to play with a team and know how to be a part of a team or lead a team because it takes a team to really get to the level where DIY isn't just this like super messy and thing that people look down on, because something DIY doesn't mean that it's inferior. Oftentimes DIY is superior than something that you're probably going to buy at the store, because you put the most effort into sourcing the right tools and materials that are going to last the longest. And you want it to last the longest because you put your love and your heart into it. And DIY scenes last through the people that build teams and spread those messages and put them forth out there.
I mean, I think we're in the perfect place to talk about that because, A, this is one of them. The Atlanta Synth Club, too, like getting to meet everyone here is super inspiring because we know there's the community. And I think the big thing and a big focus that we're looking at with future events is to continue to foster community and encourage other people to, whatever DIY that you're doing, to do it and show it and share it and make it immersive. And on that topic, I think what we'll do to cover some of those challenges and some of those lessons learned that we both experienced in our events is to talk about our next event and what we're thinking and all the things that run through our mind and hopefully coagulate that for all of you so you don't have to trip over as much as we did. But we are developing what I've dubbed a video art gallery, a space to do interactive pieces, to do crazy, glitchy nonsense for people to play their music and show off just a ton of different art forms that traditionally don't have a space in a gallery. When people think of an art gallery, they think of paintings on a wall or sculpture. And to me, what we're doing is visual sculpture or, visual painting with light is a phrase I say a lot in my day job. When I'm mad that someone didn't light a scene correctly, it's like, oh, we're going to paint with light and fix this. But kind of making that space so that someone could walk in and see a TV on a wall or a projector screen and associate that with, oh, this is creative and this is art and I can experience this and hopefully for me, maybe even own it one day. But we have dubbed that Lux Artifacts. Lux being light and artifacts being an artifact, a piece that we are presenting. And so we've been looking at different gallery spaces and different warehouse spaces, Level Warehouse here in Atlanta. You hit it on the head where it is all about the team because I know I've tried to be a hero and try to do everything by myself, and that is the reason I have no hair left on my head. And so, finding those like minds, as you guys are already doing, going to the community event and just kind of sourcing talent and sourcing skills from your friends and fellow creatives. I know that was our first list of like the framework of when we think about setting up is build the team. What talent am I booking? Is this a talent-focused event, or is it more a traditional gallery space where we're inviting people to show their work? But in that sense of like if there's a headliner or if we are the main act, how are we structuring this event, and then what team members do we need on that? I know my next adventure is to go on and learn about lights and lasers because lights and lasers are cool. Instagram has told me so. But I don't know about lights and lasers, and so finding a lighting director, I've had the benefit of working with Chris Tullock in town, which I'm hoping he walks in at some point. But just going into a space and having someone who understands how to work with a venue or understands, how to plug in my stuff and audio and make these lights interactive instead of just a bunch of strobes that are going off. And then when we talk about making an immersive environment, everything from the color temperature of a light, the intensity, the shape, where it's pointed, our eyes are led by light. And I truly believe like when you enter a space, physical or virtual, I learned about this first from video games, was like developers will lead you through a map using light. You're not going to look at a dark corner, you're going to look at the brightest point. When we walk into a room, the first thing we see is the brightest point, and then we see the reddest point. And so knowing that and acting with intent of, okay, I'm going to put a light over here because I want people to see, maybe it's the bar, maybe it's the main stage, maybe it's a certain piece, or maybe it's the start of an experience. You can kind of use light to guide people around naturally and create that motion within a space. But like I said, I'm not a pro with lights. I know how to rig stuff, but that's not my mainstay. So, that from sound is the next part there. Is sonically, what environment are you creating? And there's some amazing stuff right now where I know a number of events in town, I forget the company, but they have headphones that are Bluetooth to multiple channels, and as you walk through a space, you could switch what you're listening to. You could walk into a different mapped zone, and all of a sudden you're listening to a different piece or a different musician. And so the focus on creating a cohesive sonic environment with intent too. So the next person I'm looking for at any event when I pull up to a venue or a DIY spot is, where's the sound guy? And can I plug an XLR into this? Can I take a line?
Yeah, there's also there's a lot of research on sensory latency, what sense is going to hit first, and how latent does your body or your subconscious respond when you walk into a space to a different type of scent, or sense rather. I think that sound is actually the fastest, has the lowest amount of latency, but I can't recall completely off the top of my head. Oh, so when designing a space, thinking about what sense do you want to hit where, how do you want to layer that with another, and then how do you want to guide them to another part of the room with that sense. And I definitely think that light is, we're visual species, and all of us work with visuals and or audio or somewhere in between. So that's definitely probably more of a primary focus for us. But we can't forget about things like touch and smell, and like again those like silent senses that are not as apparent but invoke more of those deeper emotional responses.
I don't know what you call a scent specialist, but I know you and your team are scent specialists. So olfactory specialists.
We're just doing the best that we can.
Yeah. Speaking of touch, I know you have this little piece right here, but there's a lot we can do. Luther mentioned the program Touch Designer, which I think, again, if someone says, oh, I'm using Touch Designer, the assumption is that, like, oh, it's an immersive piece. And the beauty of Touch Designer is that it lets us take data from any input of almost any sense, maybe not taste or smell, but tactile data from a user, spatial data from a user, as simple as hooking up an Xbox Connect or a simple IR reader. All of a sudden, there's a great piece in Gallery A that uses that. And so those elements of, let somebody touch something and, as they're walking around a space or interacting with things, it is changing, it is evolving to their input. But we're kind of in this Renaissance period where DIY folks have invented a lot of things for us. A lot of really smart people have done stuff with Raspberry Pis and Arduinos and, simple touch-based devices and higher devices. So there's a lot you can do with, say, $100 off of Amazon, where you're not having to build this by scratch. You're not having to learn necessarily all of the coding components or how this is working.
Thank
You
God
can.
for GitHub.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if you can go on GitHub and start building and learning, so that's a big encouragement thing. Even if a lot of people are maybe only scratching the surface, a lot more people are scratching the surface and building and creating along the way.
And another thing about touch is that you can really work with those feedback loops. So whether or not that you're taking data from how someone's perceiving a smell, or rather taking data to know when to release a smell in a room, that's something that's a little bit more feasible. It's like, okay, when a person walks over here and the sensor picks up on them in this area, we're gonna have their aromatherapy, like spurt out air. So you can really create responsive environments via however you can figure out how to get the data in there. I worked a lot with simple at-home commercial EEG headsets, which depended upon how far you go into it, you can get more scientifically accurate data.
Real quick, tell them what an EEG is, because I didn't know at first.
Was it electro? I don't remember how they encephalogram, electroencephalogram.
It scans your brain waves.
Yeah. So yeah, it's taking up on the vibrations produced and electricity produced from your brainwave in terms of beta, theta, alpha, gamma. I feel like
There's a delta in there, maybe.
Delta. Thank you.
I'm just going to go down the Greek alphabet, though. Epsilon.
And essentially, each one of them has necessarily, they all interface, but they, depending upon which one is the most vocal, you could say, you can determine what state or what awareness a person is in. Like if they're in an alpha state, they're typically calm, centered, and focused. If they're in gamma, high concentration. Delta, theta, those are typically associated with drowsiness, sleep, dreaming, things of that nature. And so you can create either feedback loops where you're wanting to shift a person into a particular state, or where you're taking information from that state and having it shift a visual, or shift the lighting, or shift the sound, and have that respond to either maintain that state or again to shift it. And so that's just one of the many different sensors that you can put into touch designer. Like with the Raspberry Pis and Arduinos, you can do a lot more. You can take in like someone's breath. Where was I? I was at the goat farm recently, and I can't remember the artist, but they were using a sensor to pick up on blood oxygen levels within a person. So you would press this button and it would determine your blood oxygen level, and then it would shoot a plume of smoke, a visual smoke, across the screen depending upon where your blood oxygen level was. That also blurs the line of like how much data do we want to collect from people, and do they consent and agree to it if they knew how the data was being stored or collected and so forth. Because data is currency, and that currency is very valuable to certain people, and it's also very valuable to us from a scientific perspective if we're just seeking to learn and to know how to best improve our form and our craft. And it's also really powerful for companies. They have data brokers out there that are constantly trying to collect information on people from their online and their physiological data. And so this can be used for case studies, this can be used for potentially even collecting sponsorship depending upon what data you are collecting. Companies do like to see that, oh, I had 500 people engage with this type of art experience and so forth, and how you can position that to get sponsorships, to also get grants. You know?
I was going to say, you're the grant master. So.
I don't know if I'm a grant master, but
you taught me a lot about it. So.
There's free money out there, and free money for us to create with, and all we have to do is find the sources and position the argument on why what we're doing is important or will serve the community. There's a variety of different research, but there's a lot of different creative and community grants. Community grants tend to be the most successful for me on expressing like why what I'm doing is going to benefit a community that is typically more disenfranchised or so forth. And then that gives me the funds to create a particular immersive experience that, again, ties into some of that like sensory data that I am doing a lot of research with and collecting to kind of figure out how, kind of testing like the practical use of things that were performed in labs in a real world environment. Like, do they hold up in a real world environment where there's a lot more variables that have not been isolated and where there's a lot more sensory bleeding happening?
I was saying, it takes me back to one of the first pieces of yours that I experienced where I was wearing the haptic vest and the EEG headset, and it was a sonic meditation where my brain waves while listening to the music were making a visual, and then I was experiencing vibrations with the music on the vest. And I don't know what data you might have derived from my session, but that was to me a real eye-opening moment of oh, how cool I can drive this with my brain, but also what deeper stuff is happening in me, watching like, oh, maybe the theta or the, is my subconscious being activated by this music, or, and I remember that one was really popular that night of everyone wanted to kind of sit in that hot seat and kind of put the headphones and the blinders on per se and get lost in that. So,
yeah, I mean, once you observe an object, you change the outcome. So no matter what, once you're trying to make something happen, it's gonna make a shift. With the EEG data, I think it's best to really sit with it afterwards to kind of look at the chart, and you really want to determine, like, at this timestamp, I did this and this happened and so forth. So if you're not time stamping and you're not like actively, you don't have some end goal, it's mostly just a kind of like slight biofeedback.
Just
response.
a cool thing.
Yeah. But you can break it down later and see like all the particulars that go into it.
Kind of feeding off, like, you're talking about grants, we're talking about funding, we're talking about, maybe the challenges of putting on your own event. A big thing that I've realized personally, I think we've both realized independently, is it's important to define the fulfillment indicators or like the value indicators for you. So especially when you're starting out, that's probably not monetary. I know I have not made a dime. I've only lost money. But I've gained so many friends and so many experiences and developed in an artistic fashion. So, a lot of what we do is not to, make bank, but it is to explore this and create this, curate this, and show this off, and really form human connections and artistic connections in the community. But if you kind of set out with, I measure this, and this is success, and you haven't gone through and defined like, I want to connect with 10 people, or I want to find 5 new artists to work with, or I want to get that data to make my next event better. I want to build the brand in this way. I think it's really important to define those so that really you can reap the benefits of, success. Like if you define it first, you can achieve it. If you just leave it up to the wind, you might come out of something feeling like you haven't succeeded when in fact you have, because you've done the thing.
Yeah, the finance world has KPIs, and we decided that we have fulfillment markers, like things that fulfill you and bring you joy in life. And when you define those, it allows for you to really be present with an experience. Because I broke even for about a year and a half with the amount of times that a person would tell me that they've never experienced something like this, they've never been to a place like this, and wanted to engage with me and the world that I was building more. That was where my fulfillment was. Of course, I eventually had to make the adult decision of, although I'm getting fulfilled, I am not financially able to, I don't want to be financially liable for this anymore. So I had to make a big boy decision, or an adult decision, taking gender out of it, and decide that I could receive, now that I know what my fulfillment marker is, that I could also receive this fulfillment marker doing other things and partnering with other people. I didn't have to be the leader of the show in this regards in order to receive that fulfillment. And it did take me some time to kind of sit with that and then make the decision. But I did, and I'm very happy with it, and I'm here now, and I get to go out and be a part of more other experiences and help people, create their experiences and bring their worlds to life. Because I touched on this earlier, that world building is everything. That is the key to immersion, is you're creating this world, whether for a night, a weekend, or so forth. And world building is the new brand building. And we see that with the way that brands are interfacing with us differently. It's less about the service or the product that you're offering, but the world and the value that being a part of that world gives you. I really think that theater does a really good job at this. My favorite immersive experience used to be watching a movie, but movies kind of suck nowadays. So
as someone who works in movies, I would fuck movies. But there is some interesting. The evolution I see, just taking those parts from my day job, is that when we talk about using sense or touch as a variable or a trigger in a piece, that's Hollywood has been chasing a 4D experience for a while, and I know you can go to a 4D theater and it'll smell a certain way, or they'll light something on fire. And I think the Sphere in Las Vegas is a big example of how there's a combination between what you might see in a theme park or a roller coaster ride, as I say, and the visual and auditory experience that is a movie. And okay, we're kind of getting there, but really this is something that you're just strapped into, and this is a theme park ride. It's engaging, but maybe not immersive. But I see a promise where maybe that evolution continues.
Definitely, I don't know, 4D movies is, sometimes
silly.
there's just some things that's off about it. But I would say that, concerts, movies used to be my favorite immersive experience, and then I went to my first concert, and I said, I get it, the lights colliding with the sound, talking to strangers, the smells that kind of come up, the perfumes that you walk through, colognes, like all of it. I am there. I am not concerned about, someone calling me or texting me. I'm not looking at my phone. Well, nowadays a lot of people look at their phones because we take a lot of videos. I was at a concert like this, like Wednesday.
K-Tronada,
and
right?
The K-Tronada concert, and homie was like, "Put your lighters up." Man, State Farm takes your lighters. Like you can't have lighters in there. So he's like, "Put your lighters up." So it's like everyone's put up their phones, and I'm like, "What the fuck? Like, what the fuck is this?" And then he was like, "All right, everyone, put your phones away."
Yeah. Definitely, when I got a nicer phone, I became a shutterbug at concerts. But I think concerts are a big inspiration for my work, and specifically, I love involving other performers, whether that's a musical actor, a DJ, or someone. I want their mix input to go into my video synths and kind of combine, and like we're two living human circuits affecting these circuits and making a unique thing that the audience's electronic circuits are experiencing. I always call nervous systems electronic systems. But it is like that's what I mean when like the lights, the sound, smells, maybe even libations and stuff. But that's kind of a model of you mentioned it earlier, like how can we create a space where someone is getting those feelings and then is willing to put their phone down and just dive in and experience for a certain amount of time. I'll take as much as I can get, but I understand wanting to take a picture of something, but my hope is that you're so enthralled that you're able to put down the cell phone.
Yeah, I mean, that's the importance of having a really good photographer at an experience, because people want to relive that and whatever content that is available, and having a really good photographer for an experience will give them the ability to relive it, but they don't have to be in charge of actually taking the content.
Also, such a massive weight off of your shoulders if you're putting on an event. Sometimes I'm running around. Like yesterday, I got my whole piece set up and I forgot to take any pictures or like film anything with anybody else. So definitely a valuable member is, especially when you're building that brand and continuing to do more and more events, is everything is content, but if you're always worried about making content, maybe you're not getting the full experience at your own event. So having that member on your team, doing photo, doing video, promo, not only does that set you up for success next time, but it kind of just, it takes that weight off your shoulders and lets you host better, lets you lead better. So I know I definitely was like, I want to pay the friends to take the photo and video. I don't need to be on my phone all night. Again, that's kind of antithetical to what I want the audience to experience.
Yeah, and I mean, putting the person who enjoys being behind the camera, in that position, you're making other people, you're fulfilling their markers for success, and the content is needed not only for, I think a lot of people think about content for social media, but like for me, the content I'm collecting is for grants. The content I'm collecting is for my portfolio, so I can say that I did something and show how I did it, and then utilize that for getting extra funding and going forward. And for like at least 2 or 3 years, I did projects that I did absolutely no type of content creation or collection for, and it's like these beautiful projects that I can only talk about, or maybe show like a shitty Instagram story video from 2018, showcasing like a 2-second clip of this thing that I worked on for months or so forth. So it's definitely imperative to collect the content. I know that for a lot of people, especially for artists who are not more, I guess, modernly focused or just cellularly focused, it can seem very strenuous, but it'll definitely help you and pay off in the long run.
Excellent choice there. And two, that can be a fulfillment indicator or a key indicator. I know every time I've now recorded what I've done, I've regretted it. I did a show at Drunken Unicorn earlier this year, and I got to work with antiquarian Chris Tolak, and he did lighting and performed, and we kind of were like, man, that was fucking awesome. And then I was like, damn, we should have recorded that. Just for us, just to have as kind of a testament to our accomplishment. And so, sometimes when I'm down on creating or down on myself as an artist, I look back at all the stuff I haven't put on Instagram yet. I'm like, that's cool. That's why we're doing this. That feeling. So chasing that feeling and measuring it as success. I know for Lux, what we're planning, a big thing for me is to my key performance or key enjoyment indicator, whatever we want to call it, is that I'm starting to make this world and make this community with my friends that hey, this town has a space where you can go and look at, I hope, 100 screens, and none of them are anything that you can see online, and all of them are original pieces and unique art. But like that for me would be if I get people to come and enjoy. I don't even have a number of people yet. I guess I'll say 100 people can come and experience something new, and kind of step into my mad world of CRTs on CRTs on CRTs. That is my success point.
Honestly, a success point for me is making superhumans. You know, like that. If I can get someone to really pay attention to all of their senses, maybe not all at once, but to really pay attention to themselves and the way that they're responding within an environment, you know, and hopefully carry that spark outside of that experience to where now they're like more present with their body and their mind and their spirit and other spaces that they inhabit. That's really important to me. There's the field of neuroaesthetics, which explores how aesthetics affects your neurobiology, seems like a very straightforward thing. And I always have the statement that like everything is by design, and that it's very intentional the way that the world that we live in. There's a lot of rich people and companies that pay for data on how to manipulate and control minds. There's whether for nefarious or positive reasons, you know, being unbiased, there's a book called Sense Hacking by Charles Spence, and it goes through many different studies that they performed on like how to get people to shop more or how to feel more comfortable within an environment, you know, going to basic things like how realtors know what smells to put in a home that makes you feel more like you're at home. And there's a lot of science out there where they've done studies on how you respond to the different environments that you go in. The first chapter I think starts about talking about like your kitchen, like, you know, how to prepare your kitchen for having people over, and it goes through multiple studies on like what you could have cooking when someone walks in the room, to the type of lighting that you want to have to like make people feel more at home and so forth, and how to sense hack for whatever intent and purpose that you have. And like I said, there's a lot of companies that pay for this research that are the first to acquire it, specifically to create environments like fucking Walmart, you know, where it's like, okay, we know to put the items here so that we can get those last minute buyers and so forth. We're gonna have this type of lighting so that we keep them up all night. Things like Las Vegas, you know, like they are very, very intentional with the way that they design Las Vegas to get you to spend money, to keep you in there. They pump fresh oxygen into the casinos so that you stay awake, so that you don't feel drowsy, you know. So everything is by design, and when we're creating spaces, we have the chance to really do harm or to support the nervous system of an individual. So a lot of my work is in specific states of being that I want to encourage. You know, going back to like the thing with contours, you can't control every facet of an experience. I think that there needs to be chaos in any environment, that controlled chaos, that like choose your own adventure, you know. And like I have been in the like health science field for a while, and it's really hard sometimes to convince people to do something. They have to convince themselves. So for me, the best thing I can do is to intentionally put this color over here, to intentionally put this smell over here, and this sound over here, and to synchronize it in this way, so that hopefully by communicating with their subconscious, that they experience this lesson or come to this conclusion on their own, rather than saying, oh, well, you need, because you're stressed out, you need to take some L-theanine or something like that, and like shoving down these different ideas down people's throat. Because typically, if someone's not ready for some type of change or shift, then they're not going to make it. You know, they have to make it for themselves.
So I know we're just past 2 o'clock here. I think it might be time to take questions and see what this beautiful community has to say based on all of that. So we're not going to force you, but hopefully we can encourage any questions from the audience now.
You said that theatre does a lot of immersive, like it ticks a lot of immersive boxes. Is that what you said earlier?
Yeah.
What about it? And like, are you talking about immersive theatre? And what aspects of immersive theatre do you?
So the question is, how is theater immersive, or what aspects of maybe that when we think of theater, traditional theater, how does that play into our image of design?
And also, what is immersive theatre? What aspects of immersive theatre you've been to do you think work?
What aspects of immersive theater do we think work?
Well, it depends on the story.
Well, I think it's all about the storytelling aspect. Yeah. So, that focus of we're all using the same tools, maybe. We've got lights on the stage, we've got actors, we've got sound, we got screens, we got projectors, we got, pyrotechnics and all that stuff. But the real, and it's funny because you keep saying the word theater, but the theater of it all is that it serves the story. And so that we're trying to design with that intent too, is what story does someone walk away with? What story, even if it's their own, pick your own adventure, like what enables them to do that and really experience a story, not just, I went to this place and I saw this thing, but how are all those shared elements invoking, the senses that you would get watching somebody sing or perform, that adrenaline, that emotion, that empathy, that wonder, but how are we doing that consciously when we're designing?
There's something that's just kind of intangible about live performance, about real people, about humans seeing humans, and your brain can't decipher what is visually fake and visually real. So when you watch movies, the reason why you're feeling that adrenaline or that sadness is because your brain can't tell that you're not the one experiencing it. It just believes that it's real. Your subconscious isn't deciphering like, oh, you're watching TV, so this is not actually happening to you. You're just like, oh, like dude's running down the hallway from somebody, so like you need to get that adrenaline pumping. And there are still some visual shows or digital shows that can incorporate that, and there's still movies they're written very well to incorporate that. But I find that when I go to something that's live in the theater, I feel that visceral experience a little bit more, seeing the actual expressions on the face, the way that the actors are engaging, the perhaps even mishaps, the realness of it. Oh, okay, they might have stumbled a little bit here, or maybe they were just perfect and everything was just seamless. Either way, that right there to me is what keeps me on the edge of my seat, is the way that how real and human it is. And so with theater, again, like you said, a lot of them use the same tools. So depending upon the story that they're telling and the skill of the team, you can really capture that audience, and you can capture me, or I might walk out. So I find that in this current day and age, for me, that just provides some of the most, bespoke experiences that I'm looking for.
There's this concept too, whether that's screen or stage theater, that the suspension of disbelief is that you have the audience and they are so locked in with you and experiencing everything that they're going to suspend their disbelief and forget this is on a stage, or forget I'm just watching a 2D light plane, or I'm in a dusty warehouse. No, I'm with the experience in that story, and everything else does not matter to me, and I don't kind of peer behind the curtain or look outside the frame. So I think that's the big concept that those mediums nail really well, that we think is the really that essence and pinnacle of being immersive. If you can get the audience to suspend all disbelief and be locked in with you, you're using those tools effectively.
I do have a little tidbit there. I love immersive dining. Like I love it. Like there's something to it where I'm like, okay, I came here for a meal, but now I'm getting a show, and now I don't really know. Like now, I'm in this world. I'm here. I am not just a patron. I'm no longer Luther. I'm like a character within this world, and I get to play with the people within this space. So I love like immersive theater in terms of a dining experience as well. That
Yeah, just to follow up on that. I think about this through also thinking like kind of the ethics that come up about like what's the purpose of the immersive experience? Like, is it to get people to buy something? Or let's say it's, if it's an aesthetic thing, it's to get them to suspend belief, experience the story. But I often think about like, even you mentioned this idea of like using it to get people to be aware of how they're sensing the world. And so, I'm sorry, it's a little long-winded, but I think about like, we think something's immersive, like you walk in that video game you put for 10 hours and then the power cuts off, and you're like, oh my God, like back in the real world, you have that real disconnect between like the real world and virtual world. And then versus like, so are there immersive experiences where like actually there's the tension between the two is like maintained? And like that's what I was thinking about where you're just talking about this dining thing where it's not like about maybe fully, I'm in this totally virtualized other experience, but I'm also in this space at the same time, and I'm kind of like having this like it's like my mimetic doubling thing. Does that relate to?
So maybe the question is, is there a benefit to having a conflict between, a immersive in a real world space and allowing someone to be in both at the same time, or maybe that's maybe that's a big part that kind of goes into the suspension of disbelief, is that like, well, I know I'm just at the bottom floor of the supermarket, but I've been transported here, and maybe you have those moments of, I don't want to use the word realization, or just like I'm being jacked in and out of the matrix a lot, but that awareness that I am in a different space and maybe a different state of mind or being, and that this experience has gotten me there. But yeah, really drive. I think that's a key component to reaching that kind of heightened state of, oh, I'm aware this is happening. I'm enjoying this. I kind of wish I could do this more. That's something a lot that I experienced at Bardo was, this concept of a third space of, we're not going here with the intent to, we're not going to a bar, we're not going to party, we're not going to work, and we're not going home, but we're going to this space where we're going to have those moments where, again, I just went here on a Wednesday and I'm experiencing something I've never experienced before. This is rejuvenating me. This is, exciting me, and, kind of getting all of my brain chemistry in a different way. So I think that transformation of the space and the storytelling aspect that we're talking about relies on that conflict between, the awareness of, oh, I'm just in a room, but I'm also in this other world.
life is about tension. Life is not just. There's no tension. There's no push. There's no pull. Our body moves based upon the tension, and maintaining that state of tension, that positive tension. Was this Buckminster Fuller, or was it tensegrity? Like that was a term that he coined. I went to school for massage therapy, so like they utilized his design thinking and the way that we think about the body in terms of this in this concept of tensegrity, and how the body structure can be parallel with the way that he structured his architecture. So there definitely needs to be some form of tension like some form of questioning that kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat, in my opinion. And I think it's important that if you're going to pull people in, you also have to politely push them out. You can't just pull the plug on them. That just creates a jarring experience. So, like, how do you always have to plan for an exit. How do you want people to exit a space or an experience as well? How they enter and how they exit, and the journey in between. And also, how do you maintain the connections after the experience? How can they revisit that world, and to what capacity can they revisit that world, whether it's just through their memories or through other ways of interfacing with, in my case, like interfacing with my brand online after the fact, because with the Bardo, the way that we created experiences in person, we're so unique, and honestly, we're not collecting as much content as we could. We did a decent job, but being present and being in the moment. But how do we contact people afterwards to where they're like, oh, like, I can engage with this piece of content in this way. I can engage with this world in this way, and want them to engage with that, but then come back to the space, come back to the world. And that's where, like, with me right now, exploring AR and XR, to where people can engage with this world from their home, or working on some projects for Piedmont Park for the Beltline, where you can go walk on the Beltline and interface with this world here in this moment, go on this quest, and then still be in the real world.
Yeah, so when you're designing a visual experience or a video set and you have an idea of the space, can you talk a little bit about your process when you're trying to fit it into a new space, or like kind of taking work and being able to accommodate space that doesn't have as much like screen space or lighting?
So the question is like fitting an existing piece into a new space, and maybe turning a new space into the experience of the world that we want.
Well,
I guess, do you want technical or do you want artistic or both?
Yeah.
I guess artistically start there and then go into more technical, if that makes sense.
You take art, I take tech.
Okay. For me, when I'm going into designing experience, the first thing whether it's for myself or for a client, the first thing is my intent. And from there, I start telling the story. And even if I'm reusing or recycling or upgrading a particular installation or storyline, it's gonna be very unique to the space in which I'm inhabiting. Again, they might not have the same tools that I have in my studio comfortably. And then it's like, okay, how much do I want to bring out of my studio? How much am I getting paid for this? Or am I just doing this because I want to do it? And how much energy I have within my life to actually like show up in a space. He talks a lot about, Murphy's Law of like anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So you kind of have to, when you're doing this, you kind of have to have a lot of your own stuff ready and available, just in case like you walk into a venue and you're like, oh, we don't have extra cords for you to plug into, we don't have this wire, and so forth. So artistically, I kind of bring everything that I need to maneuver and change the space. Also, lots of walkthroughs.
Oh yeah, we have that in our notes of like the power of a tech scout, of going a week. Like if I'm playing a club or a venue or a space I haven't been, like, sometimes it's an issue. They won't let me in early, but other times like, can I come 2 weeks in advance? Can I come a week ahead? Can we do this demo? Can I talk to those people? And 9 times out of 10, everyone's like, if you're doing that communication, they're like, oh yeah, here, come in on this day when you can come late Thursday. Just working with various crews, and that helps me prepare more, is to know, hey, what type of space am I going into? So I think that's a big, is this a space that I've done similarly, or is this a completely new environment?
When you're doing that walkthrough, is there a mental checklist that you're going through to understand like what you need to know, or?
Yes.
100%.
100%. list.
Yeah, I
What
was
do
gonna
they
say
have?
my list is something we talk about a lot. My list is power, power, um, power, sound, light, motion, flow, and then I kind of take a step back and look at the macros. The first thing is like I deal with a lot of electronics, so where am I? Where am I going to get the power? Where's my piece
Where
going to
those
get
plugs
power?
at?
You know, when I walked into Gallery A, is like, where are the plugs? And also, how much things am I plugging in? You know, is this a nice venue with a good circuit breaker, or is this a place where if I plug stuff in, you know, I'm going to start a fire? But identifying that and identifying where I can be in the space. And then, of course, nowadays, I'm rolling up with like 200 feet of extension cords, so I'm flexible to be where I want. You know, there's times where like, hey, someone tells you you have to be in a certain place, and maybe that's not where you wanted to be. Maybe you don't think the piece is going to shine right there. But you know, you kind of have to adapt on the fly. You mentioned one of my favorite things, Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. But I also propose Murphy's Inverse, which is anything that can go right can go right. You know, you're just playing cards. But a lot of the times, it's great to have that checklist and do as much as you can and put as much effort in. But your audience, your big goal is that the audience doesn't know that, doesn't see that, and they can come in, they're going to experience something with their unique lens, and they're probably not going to think about everything you're thinking about. But what I focus on first when I do that walkthrough is what is going to give me the most bang for my buck in how the audience experiences my piece. If there's technical elements I can't do because of a limitation, okay, let me get the biggest part, the part that I feel is the most interactive or, you know, attractive to an audience member, to get them over to my space or to, you know, get them to suspend disbelief and experience what I'm doing. Let me get the big things first, and then worry about the cherries and on top later.
But it depends on your individual skill set. You know, if you're the curator for the experience, hopefully you've done the walkthrough, you've chosen your venue, you chose your venue for a good reason. Sometimes you're not the curator and you're just the artist brought on, and the curator doesn't know exactly how your art works, and they're like, I think you do something really cool and we want to put you right here, and you're like, actually none of this is going to work. You know, like I need this amount of space and this amount of distance for this type of thing, especially dealing with projectors. People are like, you just bring a projector and you can fill up a wall. The curators don't know about throw. You know, they don't know about ultra short throw and like where a projector actually has to go, or are we gonna have to install this on the like ceiling? Can we even do this? Do you own the venue? Are you renting the venue? You know, there's a lot of troubleshooting when it comes to DIY stuff. And like, when it comes to like your individual skill set, like, can you do something like pre-viz? You know, can you walk into Unreal or into Blender, and can you take the measurements when you go through the space, and can you build a model of that space or work with a program that can do that for you? And if I put a light over here, this is what it looks like. If I put a projector over here, this is what's gonna look like. So if you have that skill set or that tool, or know someone with that skill set and tool, pre-viz can go a long way in saving you a lot of time.
Would LiDAR or something like that help if you have that in advance?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
if you
100%.
can, yeah.
You know, like that would save you the time of like having to build the models yourself. You know, I do a lot of
Like with our phones, even you can walk into a space and do a quick LiDAR scan, and it doesn't have to be pretty. We're out of time, so I won't talk about Gaussian splats, but you know, but that's an excellent point too. Like that technology is kind of at our fingertips, and use those tools, and you'll make it through. I think that's our time right now.
Yeah, that is our time. Well, I hope that you guys got some balance.
Thank you all.